Hey, and welcome to an introduction to using the Triblend shader. I'm going to follow along the same vein as when I did the hard surface shader. So I'm just going to kind of go from beginning to end on kind of setting up an asset for this. So I'm going to be using this little office building thing, and I'm going to begin by showing the vertex paint layers. So originally I painted this. This is my testing asset for the shader. So I made some adjustments to the red channel, kind of diffused some things a little bit, spread it out. Blue channel is kind of the grunge layer. This is going to be our kind of wear and tear and soot and leaking dirt and stuff like that. And the green channel is going to be kind of like this central plaster slash, well, really it can be anything we want, but I just painted this as an example. So then, I just export it out, and it's here, and I'm going to show kind of that real-time, well, sort of real-time adjustment that I got going on. So we're going to start by setting our shader from Illum to Triblend. And now I'm going to go ahead and define my base texture. So we're going to use a painted brick. So I'm just going to assign those textures. Now in Triblend, all of your materials need to have a height map in the diffuse alpha. So this means that I don't support currently any sort of transparency in Triblend. I'm thinking of a good way to do it. But that may come as a separate shader, or like maybe a Triblend opacity shader or something. I kind of bypass a whole render step, so it's sort of an optimization, kind of. But yeah, if you need some opacity on this shader, then it might not be the best one for it. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is enable Triblend. So right away we can see that we have some coloration going on. I mean, there's no textures in the layer 2 diffuse and layer 2 normals, but as you can see, it's kind of just using a white color. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to check the vertex color debug and just make sure my vertex colors are looking good. It looks about right. Alright, so let's go ahead and, oops, not PSD. Let's go ahead and add our normal brick. So something you should note is that while the layer 2 UVs is adjustable, as you can see, if you're doing something like brick, you probably need to, let me just increase the contrast. If you want the scale to match up, you should always keep the layer 1 UVs at 1 and just change the tiling of your base UVs. So let's try 18. 18. That's good enough. I think we can stick with that. Okay. Like the scale. As you can see, everything's kind of diffused. It sort of just took over the whole texture, but we want to make better use of our blend. So let's take a look here and just kind of make some adjustments. And we need to change our diffuse color to white. Close to it anyway. Just want to make sure we're not overblowing things. Yep. Alright, so real quick, let's take a look at the glossiness. So as you can see, the glossiness is way too high here. So I'm just going to take this glossiness amount, bring it down. As you can see, we don't have any texture variation, so I'm going to turn on derived maps. So this will give us kind of an approximation of a glossy map. It's the same thing they use in the hard surface shader, and I will be kind of increasing the utility of this over time. You'll notice that the mesh itself is kind of flashing in and out when you're changing sliders and stuff. I don't know how to fix that. If anybody knows how to fix that, that would be freaking fantastic. So we'll just assume the glossiness is kind of like that, and we'll adjust our base glossiness down a little bit. Okay, So now we have a general idea of what this is looking like. I'm going to pick a side that kind of looks like it'll be a good representation. I want to get just a little bit of... That's the spogey. I forgot I need to turn that off. Okay, so as you can see, the height contrast will kind of spread that vertex color out, and then the transition contrast will kind of really spread that out. So you want to have like, I usually have like a very low transition contrast and a very high height contrast. Obviously you're going to want to do it to the point where you have, you know, a nice sharp transition. These will heavily depend on your textures, but you can usually get a pretty nice result just by kind of tweaking things around a little bit. It's kind of nice how this looks. As you can see, the vertex paint is a little bit too harsh, and it's causing these like very noticeable lines here. So I'm just going to make a quick adjustment to that. So let's look at our red channel, which is driving that brick. I'm just going to take the blur. Set that down. There we go. Go ahead and set this to red. Yeah, so you can see a pretty solid value color difference there. I'm not sure why I'm getting a white. Never had that happen before. Could be because of pre-existing colors. Not important though. I just want a little bit more variation in the vertex colors. Should give us a nicer kind of blend here. Alright. So I have this set up so I just simply export and I'll see the update in the engine. Not much difference here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show, I'm going to drag this up to the side since most of you will know about vertex painting. And I'm just going to make some adjustments to this. Okay. Sorry, it's not much to watch, but vertex paint. So as I'm painting here, I can actually just hit the export, and as you can see, the changes are being moved across. And I'm just going to make some adjustments to my contrast level here. Okay. Just going to paint just a few more things in here. It's taking very low values and kind of extruding them out. So if I just take my erasing brush and just sort of, there we go. And then I can just export this. Alright, that's kind of more of what I wanted. Expand that out a little bit so I get a little bit more variation in there. Honestly, you're just going to need to just, you know, mess with it. And you'll get a pretty good idea of how it works after a little while. Oops, that's the gloss. Damn it, I hate when I do that. Alright, so on to the next thing. It's been too long on this. So we have our two materials. I'm going to go ahead and say that we need a little something else here. This is just feeling like a two-material blend, and there's really not much character built into this mesh yet. So we're going to go and we're going to assign the grunge layer, which uses this blue channel of vertex color, and I'm going to go ahead and turn on the grunge layer. So this you supply a texture to this. You'll see the grunge map here pops up. I'm just going to use kind of a generic noise. And as you can see, this kind of creates just a diffuse layer with a glossy component. So we have our grunge layer glossy, which I'm going to reduce down to, you know, whatever seems about right. Let's adjust this threshold a little. I want it to kind of spread out a little more. And let's take the UVs and half it. I like that. Okay, we have this kind of nice look here. You can adjust the overall opacity, same way you can with hard surface shader. I think I'm just going to stick with 1. So already, without too much extra effort, we've added some more character to this building, some more color variation. Let's go ahead and add our third material. Now this is that kind of central section here. So as you can see, it kind of jacks up the normals, but that's because we don't have anything assigned to that slot yet. So let's go ahead and pick, I'm going to pick a, let's do plaster white. Okay. In this plaster texture, since the height is not really, there's not much information in the actual height. As you can see in the alpha channel, I have a mask that's just kind of generic noise. And so that's going to act as our breakup map. So in our layer 3, let's just try setting our contrast at 30. Okay. Let's go ahead and add our normal map. Same thing, just copy pasting DNA. Okay. This transition is too soft. So what I want to do here, see how we kind of get this nice look just from increasing that contrast. We have this sharp transition here. That's pretty nice. I'm going to increase the brightness of our underlying brick to kind of match that value of white. I don't have, that shouldn't be that smooth. Let's increase the smoothness of the underlying brick, and let's decrease the glossiness. The key is to kind of have a nice variation in glossiness. Obviously these are all pretty rough materials. Just going to disable that for now. Let's move our sun. Let's take a look and see what our. So as you can see, there's plenty of normal information, but this thing's looking just a tad flat. So how about we go totally nutty, and let's add some parallax occlusion. Now automatically it's going to, the first and second layers have parallax occlusion mapping. So the first thing you'll notice is that both have, parallax occlusion mapping, but this third layer does not. This is intentional actually. It allows us to kind of create effects where we have a flat surface and then the parallax underneath it. Unfortunately, as far as I know, there's no real way to add a differentiating layer here. I'm going to add like a self-shadowing / outline ability later down the road when I found a good way to do that, because obviously this isn't ideal. But you can still create some pretty cool looking effects. So we're going to look at our self-shadowing here. And just take a second. Okay, there we go. We got our self-shadowing back. Nice. Okay, so just to make sure that this is working as intended. Sweet. Yes, seems to be working as intended. Looks like our height bias could use just a a little bit of love. That looks good. Okay, as you can see, the self-shadowing is kind of, well, it's being masked. That's what this layer 3 self-shadowing is. So if for whatever reason you want the self-shadowing to work on everything, uniformly, you can do that. But for most cases, I imagine you probably wouldn't want that. So yeah, I'm just going to set the self-shadowing back up. Okay. Overall, though, this is looking much more interesting. What happens if we set our... Yeah, so this is just going to expand that sort of plaster look. It's a very sharp blend, as you can see. Yeah. So anyway, the last couple shader features, we have slope blend, which will basically convert your third layer to be a slope blend layer. As you can see in the details panel down here, it says convert third material to use slope blend. So this will basically just put that entire layer on top, which you can't really see because I have other materials on the top of this thing. But if we take and we assign this material to everything, there you go. And then just adjust the slope blend. So as you can see, this opens up new parameters, this S slope blend stuff. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so this will open up some of these options for the slope blend. And yeah, so this is going to work a little differently. It doesn't support self-shadow masking just yet, but I'm working on that. And it uses, all the stuff you'd think of from my normal slope blend stuff from the past. So I will basically be showing that off in a different video where I use this shader to create a cliff face. That'll be my next thing. So let's go ahead and disable slope blend again. That'll bring us back to normal. And then normal stuff, use detail mapping. Use breakup as kind of a special case. So if I click use breakup, this is going to open up another texture slot called breakup mask. So basically what this is basically just like the blending mode from Ilum shaders. So we're just going to pick a noise. This will basically take the soft areas in your blending mask. So I'm going to just reduce my contrast here to default. Let's go ahead and make this pretty soft. So, it's going to be a little bit hard to visualize, but you should be able to see it. So if I increase the breakup contrast of this mask, you'll see that it kind of spreads out at the edges of this really soft area. So kind of what you want to do is you want to use this for if your breakup is just not quite what you want it to be. And by changing the UVs here, you can see what it's doing. Now because this is a very soft mask, it's kind of spreading way out, but don't worry, you don't have to deal with that, on everything. So you can see it doesn't spread out all the way, but you can kind of see what it's doing. This is mostly useful if you have textures that you want to use but don't have height maps, because it will share this breakup mask among all the layers. So it's kind of the same thing. It's the same thing with the way the brick is blended. This is an optimization, but it's also useful because if you don't want parallel exclusion mapping or don't need it, and you don't want to have or don't have height maps or breakup masks in your alpha, you can efficiently just load this mask, and you can save memory and all that attendance stuff. So this is a very useful feature. So yeah, that's pretty much it.